And we're back to another episode of Spirited Justice Ace Attorney. Flip that around. The DLC case. We were in the middle of cross-examining Soren and where and how he got to the Vista deck. So, which at this point in time, he came through the holding deck with Pierce. So, we've already finished the cross-examining with him. So now at this point, we have to present something to him. And we have to present on the 5th statement that he added last time we did this. Excuse me. We're gonna present the candelabra.
Objection!
Mr. Sprocket, you just said your injury is a knife wound, didn't you? But the weapon you were stabbed with was this candelabra. A fact I know you're quite aware of. Very well. This is what I heard directly from Master Soren himself. As you surmise, Master Soren was stabbed by Bloomsbury on the day of the murder. It happened after the first wedding reception. The happy couple was in the reception hall when suddenly Bloomsbury appeared. He attacked Miss Ellen and tried to take her away. Master Soren went to stop him and found himself in a struggle with Bloomsbury. That is when Master Soren was stabbed with the candelabra, he said.
Objection!
It must have been a simple memory slip that made him misspeak. It happens to everyone. It has nothing to do with the case. You must be pretty desperate to point out something so minute. Ugh, was it minute or minute? I have to agree, Mr. Wright. You hardly need to make such a big deal over such a small mistake. But I contend that it's an important inconsistency. Besides, I couldn't find anything else. This is the only thing I have to go after. And I say it's not important. Now let's not waste any more time on this matter. I agree. Everybody has a little memory lapse every now and then. I don't think it's just a little memory issue. But, Your Honor, please let me explain. But can you? Can you really explain to this court what makes this slip so important? Yes, I can, Your Honor. After all, it was Soren himself who told Pierce that he had been stabbed by a candelabra. This is more than a simple memory slip. There has to be some kind of reason for it. Well, Mr. Wright, please explain why the witness's slip of the tongue is so important. The point to focus on here is why the witness would mistake the weapon used to stab him. Think carefully, Phoenix. This could very well change the course of the trial. I see. So why did the witness make that mistake, Mr. Wright? Mr. Sprocket's identified the wrong weapon used against him because he has no memory of it. He doesn't remember the incident, let alone the weapon used against him. Not only that, but I believe Mr. Sprocket has some sort of memory disorder. Therefore, the defense contends that Mr. Sprocket's testimony thus far is invalid.
Objection!
Just because you can't find a flaw in his testimony, you want to throw it all out? Your baseless claim is nothing but pure slander of the witness's character. Mr. Edgeworth is correct, Mr. Wright. Can you explain your grounds for making this claim? Of course, Your Honor. Think of what Soren has said, how he's behaved. That's where I'll find a clue. Very well, let's hear your argument then. My grounds for claiming that Mr. Sprocket has a memory disorder is his taxidermy person, his notebook. The notebook he always has with him. I saw daily events and information about the people around him recorded in it. Like a diary, perhaps? No, Your Honor. It's much too detailed to be an ordinary diary. It's more on the order of a database, actually. A database, you say? That's right. For some reason, Mr. Sprocket is apparently unable to retain memories. That's why he writes every little detail of his life down in his notebook.
Objection!
how could you possibly know that for sure? He might just be an extremely compulsive person. I thought so too myself, at first. To be honest, we accidentally got a stain on that notebook yesterday.
You mean you got a stain on it?
Hey, you're the one who tried to grab it out of my... Never mind whose fault it was. Just get to the point already. Right. Sorry. Mr. Sprocket. The page Miss Faye got a stain on yesterday. That's the page with the details of your stabbing on it, isn't it?
No, I only write in this notebook because I'm very compulsive. Now, drop the subject already.
Sorry, but I'm not convinced. I noticed an odd fact about your notebook, Mr. Sprocket. On the earlier pages, you used to write down invention ideas. But after a certain date, you started writing down a lot more, and in much more detail. I believe your memory disorder stems from what happened on that date. Something so monumental, it caused a memory disorder, Mr. Wright.
You don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry, but I do know what I'm talking about. And this is the proof. This is the thing that caused Mr. Sprocket's memory disorder. So we find the newspaper article of that incident. You were involved in this car accident too, weren't you, Mr. Sprocket? And the shock of losing your beloved older sister is what caused you to develop your memory disorder. Is this true, Mr. Sprocket? Well, is it? Mr. Sprocket!
It's true. That accident did something to my mind.
What?
Ever since that day, every time I go to sleep, I lose my memories. And when I wake up, the most recent thing I can remember is the day I lost my sister. It's as if I'm constantly going back in time.
What? That's truly tragic. An inconsolable time traveler who goes back in time whenever he goes to sleep.
Besides, time travelers do exist, you know. But you wouldn't understand.
That's a really bad disorder. So that's what Soren meant. He was talking about himself.
The reactions of the people around me each time I awoke made me aware of my condition. That's why I decided to write everything down in my notebook, so I could move forward.
So the only memories you have since that day are the ones written in that notebook?
That's right.
And since the page about your stabbing got stained, you couldn't read from it, could you? There's just one more thing I'd like you to clarify for me, Mr. Sprocket. Exactly what are your feelings toward the victim? Mr. Sprocket's feelings towards Dumas Gloomsbury? That's right, Your Honor. The witness said that every time he wakes up from sleep, his mind goes back to the day his sister died. Mr. Wright, you can't mean... Mr. Sprocket! Your pent-up feelings of anger and resentment towards Mr. Gloomsbury for the accident were renewed each and every time you woke, were they not? But you couldn't take it anymore, so you turned to murder, Isn't that right? What? Mr. Wright, are you saying that the witness murdered Mr. Gloomsbury? For revenge? Well, Mr. Sprocket, I don't like this line of questioning.
I...
Hold it!
Here comes Ellen. Miss Wyatt!
Your Honor. I did it. I killed Mr. Gloomsbury.
No! What? Miss Wyatt, what are you trying to do?
Don't tell me you're still thinking of going that route. Soren is innocent. He can't be found guilty. Take me instead.
Ellen, please, try and get a hold of yourself. I guess she really meant it.
My Soren didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who should be convicted.
Are we to understand that you're confessing your guilt? No. Now, wait just a...
Ellen, why would you cover for me? After I testified that I thought you must have killed him.
I'll admit, I couldn't believe my ears at first. But all I want is for you to be happy. Your happiness is my happiness, Soren.
Oh no, that face she's making!
But without my notebook, I'd even forget those feelings of yours by tomorrow. Knowing that, do you still feel this way?
You've loved me all this time. The same way you did before the accident. That's how I know that you're the same person I've always loved. No disorder can change that.
Ellen. Your Honor, there are two things I'd like to correct.
Two corrections? What are they?
First of all, I want to withdraw one of my statements. That's right. Dumas was killed by Ellen. Without memories to rely on, I took the police completely at their word.
You can't be serious.
So that means Soren never really doubted Ellen in the first place, did he, Nick?
Ellen really does love Soren with all her heart. But in order to save her, I'll still have to go after Soren. I hope you can forgive me, Ellen. And what is your other correction, Mr. Sprocket?
The truth is, I never felt anger or resentment towards Dumas about my sister.
What? Why not?
That's because the one who caused the car accident was me.
What? Order in the court! Please continue, Mr. Sprocket.
I'm the one who killed my sister. To protect my career and my future, my father made Dumas take the blame. In exchange for money and the position of lead servant.
Well then.
So, you see, Dumas must have held a grudge against me, not the other way around. And he must have attacked Ellen to get his revenge on me.
Are you sure about all of this, Mr. Sprocket?
Very sure. It's all been written down in detail in my notebook.
That notebook is important evidence supplying background to this case. I must insist you submit it as evidence.
The lawyer said I had turned to murder, but that's just not true. However, it is true that my older sister and Dumas are both dead because of me and my negligence.
I just glanced through Mr. Sprocket's notebook. I wasn't able to read the part about when he was stabbed with a bloodstain. But what's written here about his sister's car accident is exactly as he stated. Your Honor, as long as it matches what's written in that notebook, can we still take the witness's testimony as valid in spite of his memory disorder? Yes, I believe we can. I understand now that the witness's memory is in disarray. But if what Mr. Sprocket himself wrote in this notebook is true, then that means by the time Mr. Sprocket's party reached the scene, the victim had already been killed. Edgeworth's right. I'm still in the same bind as before. But should I really simply accept the contents of the notebook as a substitute for Soren's memory? Well, Mr. Wright, what do you think? Will you accept Mr. Sprocket's notebook as an official representation of his memories? Some of it, but not all of it, because it was held by someone else. Will I accept Mr. Sprocket's notebook as an official representation of his memories? No. Wait a minute, Your Honor. The defense requests a chance to examine the notebook to see if it's trustworthy. Very well, but be quick about it. Thank you, Your Honor.
So, how should we examine it?
Well, we should look at it from all different angles to see if there's anything suspicious. How about we open it? There's no point if I don't look at what's inside. I have to open it. Your permission, Soren. Here I go. Ugh. Yikes! Oh, it's just the page Maya got all stained. But I guess it's not going to be very helpful at this moment. I'll keep going. This is the last page where there's writing. Something about this page doesn't sit right with me. I better take a closer look. I mean, this torn page is kind of out of place. How do I do this again? Look at this torn page. Huh? A page has been torn out. And it looks like there was something written on it. It looks like a page has been torn out here. Mr. Sprocket, do you know what was written on it?
Oh, that? I often tear out a page when I write somebody a note. I probably wrote something down for somebody, tore it out, and gave it to them.
He does do that very often, now that I think about it. Oh, yeah. That solves that then. Wait a minute. We can't ignore the possibility that something important was written on that page. But now that the page has been torn out, how can we determine what was written there? Well, let's see. To find out what was written in the notebook, we should... let's use fingerprint powder. Oh no, we gotta do this again. If we use fingerprint powder on the notebook, we might be able to see what was written. Fingerprint powder? How would that help us find out what was written there? Well, if the writing left indentations on the blank page behind it, fingerprint powder could make these small indentations visible to the naked eye. Oh, stop. Fingerprint powder would only sully the notebook further. Mr. Wright, if you use the powder and still don't find anything, then you must accept the notebook as a representation of the witness's memories. Alright, Your Honor, I understand. If I don't find anything, it's all over anyway. Powder, don't fail me now. I will now use fingerprint powder on the blank page to find out if we can see what was written on the torn out page. Alright, let's do this. First, I touch a spot to dust it with fingerprint powder. When I've dusted on enough powder, I blow on the mic to blow the excess powder away. Something should appear. I should touch analyze. Point to what came up, then touch confirm. Okay, well. Sorry, this mechanic is kind of laggy as heck. I know, some people say the phone version is a little faster. It says I struck and killed Dumas. This is huge. What? What? Uh-oh. Soren. I struck and killed Dumas. That's what was written on the torn out page. What? What? It can't be.
Hold it! I don't believe it. There has to be some kind of mistake. Soren would never, could never.
Uh-oh. Miss Wyatt! Bailiff, please get the defendant to the infirmary at once! Someone is probably framing him! No way, Jose. Apparently, the defendant got too worked up. She's resting in the infirmary as we speak. Now then, please continue, Mr. Wright. Yes, Your Honor. This notebook is all Mr. Sprocket has to remember things by. My poor dog is just coughing off hairballs somehow. With this critical page torn out, not even Mr. Sprocket himself knew the truth of what he'd done.
I'm the one who killed Dumas? So it wasn't Ellen. Oh, thank goodness.
Mr. Sprocket, does this mean you were at the crime scene during the murder after all?
I guess I must have been.
But Mr. Sprocket, can we really believe what's written in this notebook?
Nobody touches this notebook but me.
That's not true.
And when I sleep, it's under lock and key.
Someone did touch it.
I don't remember writing that I killed Dumas, but I guess I must have.
Well, now that we have a confession, I'm afraid I must render my verdict. Of all the...
Yes, Your Honor. Please give your ruling now, while Ellen is asleep. I want the woman I love to be set free as soon as possible.
Soren really does love Ellen after all, doesn't he?
Yeah. So this is how it ends. But is that how it really went down? Is there really no way for them both to be happy? I know we should consider anything written in the notebook to be the truth, but still.
I myself wrote of the crime in my notebook. No further proof is necessary.
Soren himself wrote it in his notebook. Wait a minute. Very well. I will now give my verdict. Ellen is about to be found not guilty, and Soren will be convicted for the crime instead. And yet, am I really ready for the judge to give his ruling? No! No, not when there's still one more avenue left to explore. This court finds the defendant, Ellen Wyatt. Oh. Your Honor, there's still something that bothers me about that notebook. Oh, is there? What are you doing, Mr. Wright? All you have to do is keep quiet and your client's a free woman. I know, but I think there might be more to this case than meets the eye. I'm not quite sure yet, but I think there still might be a way. A way for Ellen and Soren to be happy. What do you mean by more than meets the eye, Mr. Wright? I believe the question here, Your Honor, should be, why was the incriminating page torn out in the first place? Why? To destroy the evidence, I would imagine. But removing it from the notebook is the same as removing it from Mr. Sprocket's memory, which means he wouldn't have been able to trick the police if it came under suspicion. No, if he wanted to cover up his crime, he would have to remember that he had done it. Just what are you getting at with this line of inquiry, Mr. Wright? Yes, please explain so that we can all understand. Yes, Your Honor. The page was torn out of the notebook because he wanted to forget what happened. Somebody else tore it out. The incriminated page was torn out by somebody else. What? Order! Order! Are you claiming a third person interfered with the notebook? It's not all that surprising if you consider what's happened up until now. After both the car accident and the murder of Dumas Gloomsbury, there was always a cover-up not far behind.
But I had my notebook with me at all times.
Did you? Because I remember you were in a panic yesterday because you couldn't find it.
That's true.
So who orchestrated this particular cover-up, Mr. Wright? If we think back over the course of the trial, it's pretty easy to guess. The one who may have tried to tamper with Soren's memory is Mr. Pierce himself. I think we're gonna finally bring him out. The one who tampered with the notebook in order to manipulate Mr. Sprocket's memory. Is Pierce Nichody.
Pierce? Pierce tried to tamper with my memories? Pierce was manipulating me?
Case in point, the two receptions that were held to cover up the murder. It was Mr. Nichody who directed the guests and orchestrated the entire scheme.
No, it can't be. Which of my memories are mine, and which have been rewritten? When did he start rewriting my memories? Who wrote this? And this? And this? And this? And this? And this? And this? Ah!
What? Soren has left the building. He's soaring. He literally took off. What?
Look, Nick! He's coming back down.
Dude, I want one of those.
My memories. Ellen.
Mr. Sprocket! Bailiff, please get Mr. Sprocket to the infirmary on the double. Mr. Sprocket has been taken to the infirmary. We don't have to worry about him running away, so let's resume where we left off. Your Honor, the defense would like to call Pierce Dakota to the stand. We've already know he carried out the cover-up to protect the company and Mr. Sprocket. What more do you want from him? This time it's different. The notebook, or rather Mr. Sprocket's memories, have been tampered with. That means the only person who knows the whole truth is now Mr. Nakoti. Don't tell me. Are you actually trying to drum up the third suspect? In order to exonerate the defendant and her group? I'm not drumming up anything, nor do I have grounds to accuse him of anything. Yet. All I know is that Mr. Nakoti is the only one who knows the truth. And I think he's still hiding something. Something we don't know about yet. No grounds yet, is it? Well, Mr. Edgeworth, does the prosecution consent to calling the witness to the stand? It does, Your Honor. However, I would like a little time to talk with the witness before we do. Very well. We will break for a 20-minute recess. Good timing. We were a little over, but that's fine. We were very close to that to be continued, and I wanted to get there. So, yeah, this is a good stopping point. So, we will talk to Pierce in the next video and hopefully find the whole real truth about it. And at this point, he is more than likely the culprit. How did he do it is the question.